Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Humanize Automation. I'm your host, Dr. Jill Schipfelbein, and I am thrilled about our episode's guest today because this woman is not only smart and savvy and well-traveled and kind, but she's put all of those attributes together to create a company called CRDLE that actually empowers people in Africa to find jobs with companies here in the United States and beyond. And we're going to hear all about that, her story, how it relates to technology. But please help me welcome the founder of CRDLE, Valerie Bowden. Valerie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. That is the kindest introduction I think I've ever received. So thank you so much.
Well, it's all warranted and true. I hope people listening by now know I don't BS on this show. And when I get really excited about someone, I hope other people do too, because what you did, let me just zoom out for a minute, because I think I like to start off the show with kind of the lens through which we see the world and the solutions we're coming from today. And I know a lot of your story and a lot of your passion for what you do today comes from, get this everybody, a solo backpacking trip in Africa from the Cape up to Cairo. What a story.
It was pretty awesome. I mean, I was like typical Midwest American girl from Indiana who did not know a lot about the African continent. And then fast forward to after grad school, I was like, I have to go. It's like the one place I really want to see. At that time, I didn't even realize how big the African continent is or how each country is so different from its neighbor. But I took a one-way flight to Cape Town and I backpacked because I was honestly just so broke after grad school. I didn't have any other option. And I thought I'd be gone for 6 weeks. And as I started traveling, I was having the best time. I met so many other backpackers. The locals were so kind and nice everywhere I went. So I ended up extending my trip. And then 7 months and 9 days later, I had backpacked until literally the other end of the continent. And I had to go home for Christmas. So it was an amazing time. And yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And I think it's so interesting. And, you and I had conversations before, and I love travel. In fact, I'm getting ready and it's 12 days now flying over to Tanzania to do Kilimanjaro,
Yay.
Which is exciting. But what's so fascinating is I find that not only when you travel, and especially when you travel solo, you do meet people along the way, no question. But I think you discover more about yourself and your relationship to the world.
Yeah, definitely. I learned so much just from everyone I met, both locals plus the backpackers I was meeting. My whole entire perspective changed, my political views changed. And even now when I get stuck in work, I'm always come on, I backpacked across Africa. I can figure out this legal contract. It's still years later, it's giving me so much self-esteem. So yeah, totally life-changing in who I was as a person and what I wanted out of life as well.
And then that didn't stop there. Your 7 months and change were not it. You ended up doing a lot more.
Because basically, after having 7 months of pure adventure, one day I'm trekking gorillas, the next day I'm rafting the Nile, the next day I'm in this really cool exotic market and I don't know what anything is that I'm seeing because it's all these new spices. So after that, there's no way you can go back to Indiana and work a typical 9 to 5. Absolutely no way. So when I was in Ethiopia, I got a job offer. It was just supposed to be for 6 months. And so I finished my trip and then I went home for Christmas. I went back to Ethiopia again, thinking it was 6 months. And then 8 years later, I was finally now I'll go back home. So I spent 8 years in Ethiopia. I met my husband along the way. And the biggest change for me is that I had previously been a social worker, thinking that charity and aid and a lot of that was the answer. And instead I became super passionate about business. And I thought that was such a cool win-win. And so I did different kinds of businesses when I was in Ethiopia, including outsourcing, which is what really opened me up to what I'm doing now at CRDLE.
And what I think is so cool about that, and the more I travel, every continent, all these different places, to me, I realize that the number one thing from my perspective with the experiences that I have had, right? And other people's are different, but it seems we align is that if you can set up infrastructures to help other people help themselves, it is way more sustainable than dropping off aid or building a home or anything else.
Yeah, because as a mom, like, do you want someone to donate like a shoebox for your kid's Christmas present? Like, no, you want to have your own money and buy them their own present. Or like the college grads that are coming out of like the places where we hire, like they don't want like pity. They don't want like donated clothes. Like they just want to like, they spent 4 years in college. They want to use their like their education to have a good career. They want to make their own money. They want to buy a house. They want to do all the same things that we want to do. And to do that, you really need to have jobs and income. And like all the emerging countries around the world who have become like out of poverty have done it through business and trade and not through charity or donations.
And I think what's so cool about the time that we're living in today, and especially, you know, what brings us even to the conversation on the show is we're at a place where globalization, you know, the country that you are doing business from is not necessarily important anymore because of the technology we have available.
100%. And like in our field, there's like Derek Gallimore from like the Outsource Accelerator. He believes that there's just going to be like one workforce. Like that's kind of like the future of what we're going to is like the global workforce. So it doesn't matter like where you're based and where you hire from necessarily. Like most things are becoming much more remote and it works.
Yeah, the real delineator is access to different bandwidths and speeds and connectivity. But even that, there's a lot of companies working hard to equalize that across the world.
Exactly. And there's places like Madagascar that have like faster Wi-Fi speeds than the US and UK. And then there's places where like sometimes in Ethiopia, we are like, you need double connection from 2 different companies and you need 2 different power sources and you still need a backup on top of that. So, but like even that has improved significantly from when I was there 8 years ago.
Now, I remember, gosh, it was 2016, my first time on the African continent, and I was doing some pro bono work with an NGO in a very remote area of Kenya. And when I say remote, I mean, like to those listening, like you land in Nairobi, which most people know that name because it's the capital, but then you're driving 8 hours on roads, and those roads may not be paved to get there. And even out there, and this was 2016, the business that was doing the most business, because I was there for microfinance education, was a charging shop where people would come and have generators to charge their devices.
100%. I totally believe that. That makes so much sense. And I've seen that too.
And it's wild, but I think it's that, you know, we crave connection in some way, shape, or form. Most of us by nature are curious, right? We're born curious. If it gets stripped out of us by parents, by society, by school, whatever it may be, that's a different thing. But we are born curious creatures, and having that access and connectivity is huge.
It's massive. Yeah, you can't go without it these days. Like it doesn't matter where you are, you depend on technology.
You do. And I think what's really also interesting, and I want to hear a little bit about not only where you got the idea for Cradle, but like what is it now in terms of the size and the volume and everything? Because everyone, I want you to hear this from her because it is insanely impressive.
Well, the idea came from right before COVID. I got into outsourcing, and it fulfilled everything I loved from social work, which was like overnight, we could get requests from a client to hire 20 people. So there's like 20 more jobs created overnight. Even like manufacturing jobs can't be created that fast because in the digital world, you can scale so quickly. So I loved that. But then after a few years of doing it for these like large Fortune 500 companies, I started to realize like what the Ethiopians were actually getting paid was pretty crappy. It was like 50 cents an hour. So I would like take like, they call it ride. It's like their version of Uber. And it'd be like our cold caller was the one driving me because everybody had to have like side hustles to make it. But if you're not making enough money for these Fortune 500 companies when you're in Ethiopia, it's like, it was just so sad. And it felt kind of derogatory. And then at the same time on social media at our company, we were never really supposed to promote openly that like most of our team members were in Ethiopia. So these large companies would talk about like their teams in Dubai, but we had like 2 people in Dubai. Everybody else who was actually doing the work was in Ethiopia. And I just thought it was so weird that we were hiding it. So when I moved back to the US almost 3 years ago, 1 month before giving birth, I was like, this is a great time to start my own company.
Of course.
Of course, good timing. So we called it Cradle because like Africa is the cradle of humanity. And we really wanted to be like the birthplace of knowing that you can hire from Africa because still most people don't know like their best virtual assistants probably from Zimbabwe. So we started Cradle. We do like virtual assistants and cold calling and marketing. And the difference with us is that we pay significantly better. We also allow our team members to work from home because I'm a big fan of work from home, and it also allows us to like pass on that savings to them so that they get paid more. And then all of our clients know that we are hiring from the continent, and we really want them to know. So like if you you hire Sarah, she's from Zimbabwe, or Kadis is from Ethiopia. We want you to know them and also to be like a really powerful like cultural exchange at the same time.
And I think it ties so nicely into not only the globalization that we can achieve through technology and digitalization today, but also, when it comes down to it, this idea of humanizing automation, which, as you know, and everyone listening knows, I'm all about. We're now at a place where technology can do that. And you're not only doing that by letting people know who they're working with, but even empowering your workforce to leverage these tools and automation. So what does the idea of humanizing automation mean in your world?
That's such a great question. I think it's about just being as technically efficient as you can, but in a way that actually makes sense. Like, I think all of us have been on the wrong side of an automation where things don't work and you're so frustrated. So it's using technology to serve your clients better, to serve your team better, to make a bigger make your mission come true. So it's, using technology in a way that actually serves humanity instead of leaving people frustrated and confused and not really touching them in the way that you can and should be doing.
Oh, I love that so much. And I want to tie back into the frustration and the confusion of inefficient technology, because there's a lot of people in the outsourcing space. And I'm not projecting onto you. I would love to hear your perspective on this. But from those that I have spoken with, and even those that I have personal experience with, it's people having unrealistic expectations for what is a good human use of outsourcing versus what is a good technical and technology-based use of outsourcing. I'd love your thoughts.
I get that question all the time. Like, when do I use AI? When do I use a person? So I think you use technology for things that you can use it for, but when you actually need someone to talk to, you want to pick up the phone and actually talk to a real person, or you're on a live chat and you want to speak to someone, that's when you need real humans doing the work. So AI can help it do faster and more. But of course, you still need real people, when you want that connection element.
And I think too, a lot of the uses, and I'm very curious, when you're training your teams and you're working with all of, these workers that you're outsourcing to, what type of training in AI and technology are you either giving them or encouraging them to discover?
Oh yeah. That's what I think people get it confused. Everybody's oh, AI is going to replace outsourcing. But to me, AI is the biggest tool for our team, because there's no better way for a virtual assistant to get ahead than to have these tools at her fingers, because it allows her to do more, to learn more of the nuances that she might not know. So a lot of our VAs do messages and comments on social media, and they're doing a lot of things acting as if they were the client themselves. But how does a 22-year-old girl in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, know how a lawyer in Texas sounds and talks? And so our account manager has helped her use ChatGPT to really mimic the client's voice in a way where she can be leaving these comments on LinkedIn, and it sounds exactly like the same comments that he would make. However, she's able to make it on his behalf in a way that she never would before. And so just having a virtual assistant, if they have to send a message to the client, or one of our cold callers to send an email to the client, using some of these tools has allowed them to say it better in a second language than they could without it.
And I think, when it comes to communication, right, the idea at the end of the day, most people would say in the majority of the situations, definitely not all, but if a message was conveyed and the point was gotten and the interpretation was accurate, then the path that it took to get to that interpretation, we're not worried about as much. Now, I'm not saying that branded language and grammatically correct language, everything isn't important, because if y'all listening to my background is all communication and writing. But when you are trying to get to a solution the quickest, but also represent your client the best, merging these two things, human knowledge with technical assistance, just makes sense.
So much sense. And we always still tell our team members, review it. Just because Grammarly or ChatGPT said that, review it, because sometimes you catch things that are not correct. However, it allows them to get more done quicker, and then review it before it actually hits the other person, and put that human touch on it that we know the clients want. So yeah, it's the best of both worlds when you combine them.
I think it's so fascinating. There was a friend I had the other day, we're sitting out having a glass of wine. She was having a beer, and she does this like local beer account, right? Like an Instagram for craft beer. Really, really cool thing. Just a thing she started as a hobby. And I'm like, Monica, have you turned this into a business? And not because you need it to be massively profitable, but as a way to just kind of like, one, offset some expenses that you're incurring for this. And two, your platform now has organically grown to thousands of people to give the local craft breweries an outlet too. And we talked about it, and she's like, yeah. And her husband's like, yeah, I know. I've been telling her to get a logo and stuff. And she's like, yeah, merch. And I said, well, what do you want the logo to be? She goes, I have no clue. And so here I am, like sitting, sipping my wine, ChatGPT, gave them the profile, gave them, some keywords, whatever, pulled up a logo, turned it to her. And in seconds, their jaws just dropped. And then we had like 30 minutes of playing around to see how we could get it tweaked different ways. But you take that and then you go to a graphic designer and say, like this, but with all these different tweaks. And now you're starting at a place where you're already 60 to 70% of the way there. Instead of someone having to read your mind.
100%. Yeah, no, that's so true. And like another example similar to that is that we used to have all these requests for like video editing, like all the shorts and the reels. And that takes a while. And it really took someone who was like a lot more trained, which is like a lot more expensive, even like in our world. And suddenly now there's like tools like Opus and other ones that can like they use AI, they cut it down into like the exact points where you have like the most engagement. They add like the B-roll in for you. And now our VA can do it in minutes. And then the client again gives a few more specifications. And then our VA, who has no experience in graphic design or video editing, can now do this really pivotal part for their social media that they couldn't have done before.
I think it's amazing. I love to call technology in many ways the great democratizer, right? Because now small businesses can keep up with the pace of larger businesses. And are there going to be differences? Of course. But before, this business could not even have done these reels without paying a significant amount of money that they didn't have. Now they're able to do it within a budget and have that type of content out there.
That makes so much sense. I love that you said that. And every time we talk, I realize how much AI and outsourcing actually has like the same in common, because I also say that about outsourcing. Like before, it was only like the large companies who could get ahead by having these like who could pay for a workforce and like have that investment in people, or who could go to a place like Zimbabwe and open a call center. But now like everybody can do that. Small business owners can actually become competitive because they can offset their costs with more affordable talent. And then you say the same thing about AI. And it is like truly, it makes small business owners or entrepreneurs get ahead faster and be competitive against large companies. And that's so exciting.
And I think there's so much like within your workforce as they start to develop. This is now something that with these tools and with some basic training on prompting or prompt engineering, as fancy people like to call it now, right? And all those things, your clients can give their outsourced workers tasks as a first stab to see if this is something where they can get a starting point, right? And now it's not, if you needed to start writing a press release, for example, if your client's like, hey, I need a draft press release that I can take the final steps, but can you get it to me? Before, that would be researching on Google, reading 2 or 3 things, getting a standard format. Now it's type in the data, format and press release, and boom, you have a first draft that will be edited still. Your person edits a little and sends it off.
It's amazing. And then if you use that time to like invest your extra time in something meaningful, like your family or climbing Kilimanjaro, like some really cool bucket list items, like that's the sweet spot, is like using technology to like make you live better.
And I think what's interesting, and I would love your perspective on this, like from not only workforce development, but kind of like work-life balance, like kind of a misnomer there, but a lot of people, they are thinking, okay, well, great. Now with AI, I can expect my people to be 5 times more productive. And so I don't have to pay them as much if they're not doing as much work. And this is kind of a discussion that's happening in a lot of communities. And I think it really relates to, what you're doing from a business standpoint. Charting hours is important, but so is charting tasks. And so like the old adage of the engineer that walks up to a ship that's hemorrhaging water or something, and a couple hammers and 5 minutes later it's fixed, and he charges the guy $100,000. He's like, it only took you 5 minutes. He's like, but that took me 40 years of expertise and knowledge. So how does this balance out in your world? What are your thoughts?
I've seen different approaches to it. I think the business owners who try and use AI to get more and more to their team, isn't caring about their team enough, right? And they're treating them like a machine, and that leads to retention issues and to even output. But if you take a business owner who really cares about their team and cares about their well-being and also wants them to use their creativity in the best way to serve themselves and like the organization, then you give them AI as a tool to have more time for that creative process and to make it even better. Like those are the clients that get ahead. So I don't think it's about like getting more per hour and like that, but like treating your team well, using it as a tool to help them to get better results so that they can be fulfilled. And then I think that actually leads to the better result long term.
I love that kind of combination. And I think I love the way you phrased it, because so many people, it's in either or. It's like it's either task pay or hourly pay. And I'm like, not necessarily, because for me, I tell teams all the time when I consult with them, it's like, listen, you want people to get good at this and more efficient. Great. They're going to save time. That time they save, put a company-wide challenge out, have a mini hackathon, have an innovation competition that they're spending time on, so that they are actually growing not only themselves and their skill set, but in turn the business when you're doing that too.
100%. And the more you can get your team members to like get in that zone, like the better the results are. Like get in the zone of creativity and to do what lights them up and to do really great things. And then everything that's like admin and that can be automated, like take off all those annoying tasks, like if you actually look at your day, a lot of it's not being spent wisely. Like it's not being spent on only things you should be doing. So do the things that light you up, and then everything else, use technology or outsource labor to get it done. And like, that's where you're going to have like 10x returns, I think.
And I think too, and I would love any stories, or support you have for this kind of thought that's percolating in my mind right now, which is, and I've done this personally when I have used outsourcing. I'm like, listen, if you notice something that I am not noticing, or you see an opportunity that I'm not seeing, please communicate it. And I have been very pleasantly surprised by that, because people do take pride in that creativity and generation. Is that something you work with your team on, or is that something that you don't get requested?
Oh yeah, we get a lot of requests for that, but I think you have to be in the right atmosphere to make that actually happen. So today I had a client call with like a British client that we've had for 2 years, and he started off with a personal assistant named Linda, who's in Uganda. And over the past 2 years, he has met with her daily. He really cares about her. She got a 3-month maternity leave. He's helped her get more trainings, and he is big on like AI. It's like one of his main pillars. So she learns how to use AI to be better in the business. And today he let me know that she is joining like his leadership team. And soon he's moving towards a corporate entity where like everybody can have actual equity in the company. So this girl who started off as a personal assistant in Uganda now is going to have equity in a British company. But the reason why she's been so vital to him is because she knows him really well, so she can give feedback. She feels comfortable doing it, but she also knows the business inside and out, that she can actually provide really good expertise. And then, of course, she uses like technology to make herself better as well. But yeah, when you set up the working atmosphere correctly and you give them the tools like tech and you really actually care about them, like they'll come back to you with better answers than you knew yourself, because they have the time and to like actually look at the business when you have a million other things on your plate.
This is one of the things that I have always been a believer in, and anyone that I've ever brought on board, like I pay them to experiment with tools. I pay them to train on the tools. This is not something I expect them to come in having. It's something that I think, of course, if you're hiring a VP or something, yes, of course you expect them to have agency and technologies and tools. But if not, it's paying for curiosity and paying for exploration is an investment that pays off.
100%. We have a real estate agent, and she was afraid she's getting behind on like the AI trend, is like what she said. So she hired one of our marketing assistant, and she has like this many hours dedicated where he can just explore all the AI tools, especially that relate to real estate, play with them, mess around with them, and then show her the ones that he thinks are promising for her business, where she then takes a better look, because she doesn't have time to do that, but she pays him to do it.
What a great use of time.
Right? It's amazing.
And efficient. And then this guy is learning all these tools that may work for other clients that he has later.
100%. And then it's like also like career advancement for him, right? So now he knows AI in a way that he didn't before. So he's like more fulfilled at work too. And now he's the one that's leading this initiative. So like that gives him responsibility and makes him feel good. So it's like such a win-win when you, allow people to play and test these things out because they take time. Like any system takes a lot of time. And you probably don't have that as a business owner. So have your team, again, do like 80% of it and send you the best ones for you and their recommendations and how they use it and how they think would be helpful.
I think this is important, and it may deviate specifically from the tech, but it goes more to fear of tech right now. And a lot of leaders, and I'm dealing with this in business, they don't understand it and they tend to fear it or say there's no way it can do as well instead of being curious and letting people try. And it's holding their businesses back. So how are you kind of, with your team members and with clients that you relate with, right? Because you have the outsourced labor, but you also have all these managers, leaders, business owners that you're dealing with. What are some of the conversations you have around mitigating that fear and mitigating like the falling behind pressure?
Oh yeah, again, like I never heard anyone talk about AI until the past 2 months, and every discovery call now is largely part of like AI. Everybody is, I think, afraid of it or can't quite understand it. I have just found in life, like having that fear-based perspective never leads anywhere good. So instead, like thinking more about like the goals I really want to have and like what my company really could be. And then realize like technology takes a minute to get used to it. And then once you do, you're used to it and it like grows your business. And then also like most of the people we hire are in their 20s. So honestly, who else to better teach you tech than like a 24-year-old who's on TikTok all day long, right? So like if you're afraid of it, but you're like, older, like you want to hire a young person who has the time to teach you and isn't afraid to try things out. Cause like the people we hire aren't afraid. Like they just grew up with it. It's like normal to them.
Yeah. And it's so funny because people, they get afraid of this all the time. And I said, all of you have one of these in your pocket now, right? Do you remember the first time you had to figure out how to use it? And then that every time you get a new phone or iOS updates, we have like a few moments of frustration, maybe for a day, but then you figure it out. Why don't you try that approach to every other tech in your life?
100%. Once you get used to it. And the thing is like there's so many people who are not afraid to help you. Like my mom is someone who's not great with phones, but I'm always like, go to any coffee shop and ask any person there. They will have no problem telling you how to turn down the volume. Like they will be like, not an issue, mom. Like they will be happy to help you. So again, like if you're not used to it, like, that you'll get there eventually. In the meantime, people are happy to help. In fact, it probably makes them feel good because they're sharing something that they know how to do. Like that always feels good.
Right. I'll never forget two things with my parents in technology, Valerie, which is one, you remember when this was a while ago, but Bitmojis came out. You remember those, like the awkward cartoonish mock-ups of those?
Yes.
When I taught my parents those, my dad had a heyday setting those all the time. And my brother's like, why did you show dad these? But that and GIFs, though. GIFs make my life happy, or the most well-placed GIF on a text chain is like the best thing in the world.
Yes. I was doing, I was like on a customer service live chat and they were using GIFs. Like I was like, oh, okay, I got it now. And they sent like the funniest GIF out after that. And I was like, this is so funny. Like, this is like that personal touch like you really want in a customer service. So yeah,
it is. And everyone was afraid of these or skeptical of these technologies, right? And they may not be right for your business, but I'm sure every single person listening could go on their phone and find a text chain they have where there is a GIF of some sort that has made them smile. And so while you may not use it for business, don't be afraid of these new things because you don't know what will make your customers smile, your employees smile.
100%. And kind of on a sad note is my grandpa led like an education business for his whole life, super, super successful. And then the internet came out and he was like old school grandpa, didn't adjust, and couldn't keep up with like the online shopping that became popular. And eventually he had to like close his business, which was like fine for him in the end. Like he made peace with it, but it was hard at first. And I always think like that business, which had decades of experience and knew how to reach teachers and knew where the teachers were, lost his business because he didn't adapt to technology. So like if you're afraid of technology, I almost think you have to flip it and you should be afraid to not know technology.
I love that. I love that so much. So with that in mind, like what is one technology that you have found recently that has just been a game changer for you or a specific use case?
Well, I think using ChatGPT to mimic voice or to make what I say sound better has been really, really helpful. I think I'm good at copywriting. Like I genuinely enjoy it. And then Nadia from my team, our account manager, was like, Val. And then she put it into ChatGPT and I was like, that is so much better than what I said. And it was way more effective and it was funny. And we used it and like we end up using it with a client who got him leads. So I think the ability to take what you really want to say, put it into ChatGPT and like have it just correct it a little bit. It's actually more effective. Like I hated to say that, but it's true.
You know, and it really goes into, and this is like spoiler alert to everybody, we're going to be doing little mini-sodes of Humanize automation that are just me teaching you different tools and tricks. And one that's upcoming is on the anatomy of a prompt. So like how you get the better results asking it to do that. And like a lot of people don't even know that you can ask ChatGPT to mimic the tone on a website, put that URL in there and do that, right? Like this is what you guys are doing.
I didn't know the tone was a thing until my team, who's 10 years younger than me plus, pushed me into it. And then I tested it and they were right. So that's amazing. And I can't not wait to listen to those mini episodes. I will be passing them on to my team. That's so cool.
It's like training, you know, that's where my heart is in that education space. So I'm like, can this be a different type of podcast? Like I love smart guests like Val here, but I also love teaching. So, but enough about that. On an aside, I think it's really fascinating. And if you haven't done this and everyone listening, I encourage you to do it. Put samples of your writing into ChatGPT and have it describe your own tone of voice. So then anyone else that you have writing for you uses that exact prompt that ChatGPT gives you to give you your writing style. So in the style of whatever it says, do this. And it's just kind of a shortcut, one of those like shortcut clipboards that you just have on hand.
100%. And that's how like you can literally onboard offshore team members and feel really comfortable. Because initially clients come to us and say like, I'm afraid, like we want to, like we have a voice, we have a brand, whether it's customer service or like a CEO who's hiring like an executive assistant, you want it done in the right way. So now with AI, you actually can get it done the right way. Plus you have a human double checking everything. So like perfect combination.
Well, it's huge. And Emmy, you know, the agency that I work with, that we both worked with actually, that, you know, connected us to be able to have these conversations. It took, I'd probably say 2 or 3 months for the team to really get an edge on my style, where my editing of captions and things is now down to, you know, under 5 minutes instead of 20 minutes.
Yes. Yep. 100%. It takes time. I think that's the other thing clients don't know is I think people want perfection right away, but like with technology, it doesn't happen right away, or with people, it takes time. But if you invest that time, eventually it pays off.
No, I think that's so important. Val, this has been like, I love talking to you about so many different things, but what I think is so important for everyone to listen to a little more is how are we using technology to connect people and provide opportunities and provide education? So anything else you want to share kind of towards that end?
Man, I mean, yeah, it's like what you said, like what this whole conversation's been about. If we use technology the right way, it increases like education, it increases opportunities, it saves you time. I think the biggest takeaway from me from this conversation is like people should not be afraid of technology because it's only going to help you do more of what you love and be better at what you're doing. So people should invest the time in learning technology, and the education that comes out of it and the empowerment that comes out of it is going to be like life-changing.
Oh, I love that. That's a perfect summary to wrap up the show. Valerie, thank you so much for coming and sharing with my audience about what you do. And everybody, be sure to check out CRDLE, CRDLE. It's like this amazing company that she started that's doing cool things all over the world. And if you need outsourcing, it's a great first place to start.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. I will be back with another episode soon of Humanize Automation. Stay tuned. And if you want to learn more about CRDLE and all of the amazing work that they are doing, be sure to check the show notes.